Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Uncover Agile Product Launch Strategies Using Analytics. We're pleased you could join us as we have an in-depth discussion on how pharma companies can overcome traditional product launch challenges to ensure their drugs have a real impact. My name is Megan Billingsley, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. But before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button located in the top right-hand corner of your presentation window. Should you need technical assistance, click on the Help widget located on the bottom left corner of your console. We encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget at the bottom of your console. We'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of this presentation. Following the presentation, you will also be able to access the on-demand recording of the webinar using the same link from today's live event. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers. With us today are Mani Sethi, Principal at ZS Associates, and Kapil Nair, also a Principal at ZS Associates. Mani and Kapil, it is wonderful to have you both with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In today's webinar, we will go over current trends and challenges faced by product managers during launch, leveraging analytics to tackle pre- and post-product launch challenges. Take a look at a case study on how a company identified missed opportunities and refined its targeting and promotion strategy. And lastly, we will review key components of the REVO Launch Analytics and its benefits. Mani, I'll pass this over to you.
Thank you, Megan. Hello, everyone. I've been with ZS for about 14 years, and during that tenure, I've worked with dozens of launch and growing brands. And many of my colleagues at ZS has done the same thing. And what we are seeing are some trends over the last few years. First of all, the markets are becoming more competitive, and each launch is becoming increasingly critical for your organizations. Many companies are launching in new therapy areas where they are not familiar with the targeting or promotion dynamics. And there is a desire to do more with less, which means there is desire to automate things so that you can get the same quality of insights and results even while not spending as much time or money on it. The cost to actually bring a drug to market is not coming down. It's still of the order of $2.5 billion. So it is critical that the launch is a success. And last, it's becoming very critical to very quickly identify the opportunities and drivers so that the corrective actions can be taken. And that capability can be worth millions of dollars of impact to the top and bottom line of the brand. So as I mentioned, we have done launch analytics for decades, and many of you have probably also been part of various launches. There are certain themes that always come up. You can almost anticipate some of these things coming up for your launches. As you probably know, 2/3 of launches do not meet their forecast. So what that means is the organization is then trying to figure out how to correct that. The first theme that comes up is, help me understand what is driving the performance. What are the key 3 or 4 things that I really need to focus on to turn this ship? Not the 40 KPIs that I have, but the ones that are really going to create impact. The second question that comes up is, what are we missing? We came up with a targeting strategy, we prioritized based on our best judgment before launch. But now that the launch has already happened and we are seeing the results, what can we learn from it to identify pockets where we didn't anticipate the success we could have had? The third one that comes up is, we have these 100 territories. Some are doing really good, and some are doing not so good. What can we learn from the territories that are doing really well to help the ones that are not doing well? And then the fourth challenge that organizations face is everybody is working in their silos. There are probably 10 different stakeholders that you have that are looking at specific things in promotion or performance or payer or patient or perception, and all of them have slightly different perspective. How do we bring the organization together in a cohesive way to drive the right action? And the last that we talked about is, you probably have faced this situation and you have probably addressed it in the past. Typical approach that people take is let's collect all the data, let's integrate it, let's do the analysis, let's generate insights, let's come up with recommendations, let's figure out actions, and then something happens. And it at least takes 2-3 months, and very often it takes much longer. How do we shrink that to just a few days so that we can take the corrective action very quickly? So given all those themes, Kapil, looks like you have a solution for us.
Yeah, thank you, Mani. So recently we helped many pharma clients overcome these challenges using our REVO Launch Analytics module. I'll quickly talk about it, and we'll actually show you this in action. So there are 3 key components within this module. First, we start with integrating a variety of data in just one place. We use our REVO Data Manager, which jumpstarts the data integration process by leveraging a lot of our pre-built data adapters, quality checks, business rules, data models, and truly bring the system from 0 to 60 to 70% in days, not in weeks, not in months, days. And this data can be refreshed every week, every month, and the automation lets you do this without any manual intervention. Number 2 is our pre-built performance analytics. We provide the usual dashboards with the predefined 40 KPIs that Mani talked about. Everybody still likes them to have those. But we also provide machine learning-based advanced analytics. And these advanced analytic components are pre-built, and they answer to a lot of the questions that Mani just talked about. What's driving our performance? Why it's lower in certain territory? What if I increase samples? What would happen? And many more. And these questions can be answered in a matter of minutes, not in days or weeks. And then this is supplemented by our Performance Hub, which essentially brings all the key stakeholders together on a regular cadence with analysts, the launch tools, to make sure that the insight-driven decisions are being done right there, and you can take actions on those. And finally, there are many questions that might require further slicing and dicing of data, perhaps additional analysis. That's where our analytics bench comes in. And with integrated data, the analytics tools that you're already using with our advanced analytics, that's available to the analyst at the raw level, at the process level. And it provides many pre-built analytical data sets and algorithms to the analyst to create their own analysis. Maybe it's a new one or the new question comes up. Now, we've been talking about REVO for quite some time. Let us show you a quick demo, and one of my colleagues will just show you that how it works in reality.
Hello, and welcome to a quick demo of REVO Launch Analytics. In this demo, we will navigate the entire journey of driving actionable insights right from initial data management as you prepare for the launch. Let's begin with REVO Data Manager, our data management product. Here, I will create a new project for data management using our Launch Analytics stencil. The stencil expedites my project implementation by providing relevant, pre-configured data sources like sales and market access data, as well as market research data at a granular level like ATU information. After selecting my preferred data sources, I can also choose associated business rules, metrics, and even data quality checks. I will import all these objects into my project. Let's take a look at our project now. We can begin by adding some adapters using the many bidirectional connectors available. From there, we can configure ingestion schemas, data quality checks, business rules, and exports. Business rules can be configured using a graphical canvas and drag and drop transformations. Once our project is implemented in Data Manager, we can run all the flows to process all data and load it into your data lake and data warehouse, which will act as a central data source for our Launch Analytics business application. REVO Performance Analytics capability uses a what, why, and how framework to help answer the most common business questions to drive brand performance. The what section helps you define the performance question. The Why section identifies the drivers of brand performance nationally in a subsegment or a geography. And finally, the How section estimates the likely impact of pulling a specific lever to drive brand performance. In this example, the performance question is, what is driving NRX share variation across the country? Specifically, why the Midwest region is doing poorly. Note that we could have defined performance differently. For example, we could have looked at NRX volume, NRX growth, MBRX volume, or MBRX share. We could also limit the question to a specialty or segment if needed. Let's look at what can explain the poor performance in the Midwest. In the Why section, we leverage a predictive model using the latest AI ML techniques. We divide drivers into two categories, segmentation drivers and promotion drivers. The segmentation drivers, such as specialty, deciles, preferences, and affiliations, cannot be controlled. Knowing which of these variables drive brand performance can help us refine our targeting strategy. Promotion drivers, such as calls, samples, perceptions, and vouchers, are controllable. This chart tells us what % of national performance is driven by each of these drivers. As we see, samples drive 29% of the NRX share, followed by an access score at 26%, and so on. On the other side, we can see the relative importance of these drivers at a sub-national level for the Midwest. What we see is that samples are at 26% and access is at 34% for the Midwest. In the table, we see the sample nationally has an average of 0.2, but only 0.12 for the Midwest. This leads to a key insight that we are not dropping enough samples in the Midwest, causing a dip in share. In the How or What If section, we can create a scenario and estimate the impact. Here, we set the geography to Midwest and increase samples by 0.2. Let's also raise adherence to call plan. We see an estimate change in share of 3%. The REVO Performance Analytics capability can be configured for any set of drivers and segmentation variables. The results are refreshed seamlessly every month or week as new data flows in, so that you are always looking at insights based on the latest data to guide corrective action. Now, it is possible that you want to perform some ad hoc analytics beyond the business application. With REVO Analytics Workbench, you can quickly create your sandbox, add your project, add team members, and configure your preferred AWS resources along with appropriate tools and applications. Once provisioned, access the sandbox to get access to all the data and use your preferred tools like SQL, Jupyter, RStudio, and Tableau to perform advanced analytics and visualization. This brings us to the end of our quick demo.
Okay, thank you. That demo should have given you a good sense of what this capability is all about. I want to follow up with a quick case study. So this is about a client that had launched a new drug in a therapy area they were actually quite familiar with. They had an existing brand in it, and it was doing well, and they were launching a different drug with a different profile, but in the same therapy area. However, as the launch happened, it was performing much below expectations, and the stakeholders had very different views as to what was causing the brand to not perform as well. So the question really was, what are any targeting and promotion levers that we have that we need to adjust in order to get this brand back on track? And they were expecting similar questions pretty much every quarter. They had a senior management meeting every quarter to figure out what is going on, and they were expecting the questions to evolve over time. So as you can imagine, at launch they wanted to know what is making somebody a trialist. Over time, they were expecting that will change to what is making somebody adopt at a higher level. So that gets into the volume. And then eventually, it would change into what is causing somebody to have higher share versus lower share. So they wanted to have some sort of capability that can continue to evolve as their business questions evolved. Okay, so some of the things that we did as part of helping this brand was, first, as you saw in the demo, we helped identify what are the levers that they can pull. So some of these levers were things that they could control in terms of where to put their promotional effort, and other support needed for the brand, but also what are the levers with regard to the profiles of doctors that were really adopting versus not adopting, and that gave us clues as to how to change some of the targeting approaches that we were applying. We were able to quantify the relative impact of these drivers, so we could focus on the 4 or 5 that were really important and were going to really make an impact on the brand performance. And as you can imagine, the entire nation is not one uniform entity. Each geography has its unique dynamics, and we were able to go subnational and provide guidance that district managers could use for their specific reps. And finally, we were able to also incorporate some of the ATUs, and that helped us identify which of the messages were really driving performance versus which were not having as much impact, so that they could focus on the things that really mattered. And on the right, you can see the impact of making these changes. Some of the bottom performing territories, as we put the solution in place, started getting towards the national average and catching up with where the rest of the country was. Okay, so getting a little bit into the details of the solution, as Kapil was mentioning, the first part is really getting a lot of this data together and integrated, and we have connectors and accelerators in place that can help make this happen very quickly. The kind of things that we incorporate, first of all, you do need performance data. So these could be things like your sales volume, growth, share, could be NRX, NBRX, or TRX, just to figure out what the performance is like. Then you have various things that could be drivers, things like your payer data. So what is your channel mix? How's your fingertip formulary information coming up? Different access levels that you have. You have your patient claims data that can get into patient dynamics, your abandonment rate, rejection rate, patient profiles, comorbidities, and so on. Of course, you have your promotional data, calls, samples, vouchers. You can have some of your non-personal digital channels as well. And then you have your customer profile in terms of doctor segmentation, specialty, preferences, affiliations, and so on, that you may not be able to control, but knowing that can help you with your targeting strategy. And as mentioned, we can incorporate your market research data in terms of ATUs or message recall studies, and a variety of other data. And as I mentioned, for all these commonly occurring data sources, we do have connectors and accelerators that can very rapidly bring these together and integrate them and make it ready for analytics that we're going to talk about. All right, so in terms of analytics, there are certain things that you saw in the demo. These are the commonly asked questions that we can anticipate and be prepared for, so that when they come up, we can very quickly answer them instead of having to spend months to get to that answer. So the first one here is, what is driving performance? Here we are looking at drivers that you can actually control. So things like your promotion, things like your access, things like some of the abandonment rate, rejection rate, some of your messaging, and so on, so that you can look at all of them in a holistic way, and then your green bar, which is your overall performance, being able to really break it down and say that overall performance is driven by 20% for driver one, 10% by another, and so on, so that we have a quantification of how important each of these drivers are. Second is other drivers that you cannot control, but that can help you identify missed opportunities. So, you had your targeting strategy, but looking at this, you can very quickly find out what is the profile of doctors that are really adopting my product. So if you think of the green box on the top right, and what is the profile of doctors that are absolutely not adopting, and I can probably deprioritize them. So identifying those missed opportunities and pivoting your resource allocation very rapidly. And the third is being able to do this not just nationally, but subnationally. being able to go to a specific geography and be able to say, this is what's going on in the nation, but in your specific geography, here are the levers that you should be pulling to drive performance. And the last one is being able to do the what-if analysis, which is to say, if I make any of the changes that are coming up from these three modules that we are talking about, what is the likely impact? What is the lift I can anticipate so that even before you pull the lever, you can predict what is the likely impact and decide, which ones you want to prioritize. So those are all the things that we can anticipate and plan for. But as you can imagine, things come up and you need to be flexible. And Kapil, I believe you have a solution to enable that flexibility.
Absolutely, Mani. Our proactive analytics can answer many questions, and business teams can quickly make decisions based on those insights. But sometimes an analyst needs to perform additional analysis for various hypotheses that come out of some of these meetings. There could be different questions altogether, which requires a brand new analysis. For those scenarios, REVO also provides an ad hoc analysis capability using Analytics Workbench. This enables direct access to the same integrated data and analytics tools for quick analysis that we leverage to build our proactive analytics. Teams can create separate workspaces, which provide the data in cloud, the tools that they prefer, along with many pre-built algorithms and models that accelerate their analysis. Using Analytics Workbench, teams can also collaborate with each other, share their analysis. Maybe there is a report, or perhaps access to a data that they already built that's ready to go for analysis. This brings a lot of agility into their insight generation process. And teams can truly focus on analysis and how to drive decisions and not spend time on a lot of the data wrangling work that nobody really likes. I know we mentioned REVO a lot, so I want to share a few facts around REVO. Currently, REVO is deployed now over 20 clients, and this number is constantly growing. And many of them are leveraging multiple use cases within REVO. We are constantly adding new data adapters, business applications, and domain-specific stencils to make sure that clients' investments are future-proof and we bring in continuous innovation to them. For example, some of the numbers on the screens, the stencils, 15, 100 plus pharma data sources. These numbers continue to grow as we onboard more and more clients. So today we talked about Launch Analytics and Analytics Workbench, but there are many other REVO use cases that can be leveraged as per our clients' needs. Many of the clients start with one or two components, but then our platform allows these companies to scale very rapidly and enable new capabilities in weeks and not really in months, or in many cases we have seen it takes years. So if you like to know more about the other use cases, which are listed below, whether it's in commercial reporting, or specialty analytics, or digital, feel free to reach out to me or Mani, and we'll be happy to share some more information.
Thank you, Mani and Kapil. That was a great discussion. So we have a few minutes left and several questions from the audience. So Kapil, the first one for you is, can we use REVO Launch Analytics if we already have our own data warehouse or data lake?
Absolutely. We also support algorithm as a service model, which enables our customers to leverage their own process data or raw data in their data lakes or data warehouse and pretty much get the same feature sets what you saw earlier in the demo and what Mani described. It's the proactive functionality, but using your own data. So we bring our model to the data wherever you have available. Either way, it can work.
Great, thank you. Okay, Mani, we have a question for you. What gives REVO Launch Analytics the edge over other platforms from software vendors?
That's a good question. So, general purpose software vendors and tools, do a certain, a capability. But what we have here is very pharma-centric model, analytics, and support. So you were listening to Kapil. There are over 100 pharma-specific data sources that we can integrate. We have connectors for them, and we can very rapidly integrate them because we have worked with those data sources for years, and we understand, how to integrate them, calculate the right KPIs, and make it part of the analysis. Second is the pharma-specific analytics. We have been doing this for decades, and we understand the kind of analytics that's needed to drive the right action to change the trajectory of the brand. And the last piece is we have people that understand the pharma industry. So if in case support is needed, we are happy to have the right experts come and sit with the brand team and help them work through this capability so that when they are sitting with senior stakeholders in the room and looking for answers quickly, they are getting the right support and are able to drive that discussion and decision making that is needed to make the brand successful.
Great, thank you, Mani. Okay, another one actually for you. When should we put the capability in place versus the launch date, and how long do we keep it in place after launch?
So another good question. We recommend actually putting the capability in place a few months before launch. And the reason is often the market has other competitors that are already there, and you can use that competitor's performance to identify what is driving success or lack of success in certain pockets. And you can do that even before you have launch. So to the extent there's a competitor in place, you are getting some of the data in terms of their performance, their plan track data, their access data in terms of payer access. Many times clients are doing baseline ATUs, which has all these competitor data coming in. You have PLD data potentially coming in even before your own launch. So to the extent that is happening, this capability can be put in place ahead of time so that you can learn from what's going on in the marketplace prior to launch. That way you have enough clues as your own brand launches, and you can quickly pivot as you see new things. So we recommend, putting this in place, let's say 3 to 6 months before launch, and then at least 1 year post-launch. Many times companies see the benefit of this sort of capability and keep it much longer than just the first year or two, because the concepts apply not only at launch but even when for inline or growing brands. So we have seen companies keep it much longer as well, but at a minimum the first year.
Awesome, thank you. Another question we have is, how can you integrate ATUs for launch analytics? Our vendor doesn't provide that data to us. Mani, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, so as a third party, we can get ATU data, identified ATU data for specific doctors from your vendors. Obviously, they won't give it to you because of all the compliance reasons, but as a third party, we can get it and we can integrate it, and that often provides very good insights. Like I was mentioning in the case study, when we did that, it helped us identify which messages were really resonating so that they could focus on things that were really driving performance.
Great, thank you. Okay, Kapil, coming back to you, how does the capability incorporate the latest data that comes each month?
Sure. So all the data processing that you saw earlier in the demo within the data manager, we automate all of those steps. Once the setup is complete, from data ingestion, data quality, business rules, all of those components run in the right schedule that we work with you. This data can be refreshed automatically on with minimal manual intervention. You would not require any of the QC checks and eyeballing that goes on usually, and it can be scheduled whether it's monthly, weekly, whatever time that you prefer.
So, Kapil, if I can add, the business users, you can probably appreciate this. The stakeholders always want the results based on the latest and greatest data. What happened, last week, last month, and not, necessarily we did an analysis 3 months ago. So what Kapil is describing is of great value when you're sitting in a room talking to your senior stakeholders, and you can always claim that this data is as of last week or last month, whatever it is your cadence, and I know that gives a lot of credibility to the insights and actions that you're recommending.
Great, thank you
Great
both.
point. Yep.
Mani, we have a question here that says that they already have pretty robust dashboards. Why would I still need this?
Yeah, that's a question that we get often. Dashboards are very important for launch and, brands in general, and you should definitely have those. This is not meant to replace that in any way. But if you think of dashboards are descriptive in the sense they tell you what is going on in terms of your performance, geographies, other KPIs that you might be tracking. So it's telling you what is happening, but it does not tell you why it is happening and how you can potentially correct some of the things. So with this capability, you're getting into the diagnostics, helping you identify top 2, 3, 4 KPIs that you really need to focus on. And then, take corrective action and have a pretty good prediction of what is the likely impact of taking those corrective actions. So this is getting into, like Kapil was saying, AI/ML algorithms to drive some of the more advanced prescriptive, predictive diagnostic capabilities.
Great, thank you. Kapil, how long does it take to set this up?
It depends on the number of data sources, the complexity of the business tool, the processing, but we have seen anywhere from 2 to 3 months for setup, and this includes a lot of testing, configuration that we work with you.
So just to add, that is 2-3 months one-time setup, but like Kapil was saying, every month after that, it's pretty much automated. So as you are getting new data, it's just getting updated pretty regularly and without much incremental effort after the initial setup.
Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have today. A big thanks to today's speaker, Mani Sethi and Kapil Nair, and of course, our audience for joining us. As a reminder, today's webinar will be available on demand, and the link will be sent to you after the webinar. Also, audience questions that were not answered during the Q&A will be answered via email. Have a great day, everyone.